How are you?
Good. How are you, Beth? Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
Good. Where are you based?
I'm in Ohio.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm in California, so happy snow to you.
Actually, I don't have a whole lot of snow, but it is very cold, so I think it's coming. All right. So, is it all right if I just jump right into my questions?
Sure, that's fine. Yeah.
All right. First off, what sparked your passion for writing?
Well, I was always a reader growing up. We didn't have a TV. We were immigrants. We didn't have a TV for a long time till I was about 12. So I found my way to the public library and I would just read and read and read and read. Every week, I got to take home 7 books and I just found some favorites that I'd reread all the time. And looking back, I feel like those books, that those heroes' journeys, they really gave me the courage to face the challenges that I was going to face in the next few years in middle school and high school. And so I started to see the power of stories. And then I always wrote for fun because I love words, but I never thought it would be a career, a full-time career until my second book, which was rejected by 23 different publishers and took it took 11 years between my first book and my second book. And so it was that time when I thought, should I be all in? Is this the way that I was supposed to serve the planet? Is this it? And I'd been pursuing other things. And then I sort of laid those down when the second book came out and said, yeah, I think I'm going to go for it. So I did, and no looking back.
Yeah, for real. Like with Rickshaw Girl getting adapted to a film, like really, I'm glad that you chose this path.
Yeah, that book was rejected as well quite a bit. Took a long time to find a home. So it's amazing to me that all these years later, it's being adapted to a film and more people are receiving the story, and it's kind of that story is kind of a miracle.
How does it feel that it's getting adapted into a movie?
Well, I remember when my second book came out, which was Monsoon Summer, the book that had been rejected so often, I got to go to a library convention for a signing, and they set you up all the authors in a row. And so I happened to be in between two of the most like hot, young, rising authors. There were two dudes on either side of me, and there were long lines of librarians waiting to get their book signed from them. But in my table, there was no one. So I'm sitting in between these two long lines, and I thought, well, I'll pull out my manuscript, Rickshaw Girl, and start working on it. Nothing else to do. And I was working on it, and this lovely woman from one of the lines came over and said, hey, I think I read Monsoon Summer and I liked it. What are you working on there? And I said, Rickshaw Girl. And I gave her the pitch, which is it's about a girl who's trying to help her family out. She lives in Bangladesh and she really wants to help her family out by making money, but she loves art. And so this woman said, well, I'm an editor at Charlesbridge. Why don't you send me the book? And so I did. And that's how it got published, was from that humiliating moment of having no one there. So then now looking fast forward, it didn't sell that well when it came out, but bit by bit, I just think of this book because, rickshaws, you pedal them. And I just think about this little story I wrote so many years ago, just pedaling along and getting translated into, first of all, lots of Asian languages because it's a story about honor and duty and trying to help your family. And so it resonated in Japan and China and India. And then it became a stage play, and then now it's being a movie. It's been made into a movie, and it's embodied in this beautiful actor Navara Rahman, who is this Bangladeshi Muslim girl, and she's feisty and she's fierce, and she just wants to help her family so desperately. And I think Navara just does it such a beautiful job that seeing her on screen and thinking back to that character that I created all those years ago in my head, it's really immensely gratifying, and I'm so grateful.
I love that. So, in the process of adapting it to film, were you approached to make this a movie? Like, how did this process start?
Well, I go to an annual writers conference, Big Sur. It's and I teach there, and it's sponsored by my literary agency, Andrea Brown Literary Agency, and so there's several faculty members there, and I was there years and years ago, and one of the faculty members said, Eric Adams, he said, I'm a filmmaker, and my wife absolutely fell in love with your book, Rickshaw Girl. And we love Bangladesh. We love Bangladesh, which is the country next to India, and we love Bangladeshi filmmakers, and we really want to get involved. Do you think we could buy the option to adapt your book? And we don't have much budget. We're not even sure we can raise the money to make the film. So it would be sort of a courtesy option, like, we'd have to do some minor transaction. I said, okay, sure. So it was like, I think we handed over the option for like $1, because it was just, it's such a dream. None of us ever knew anything would happen. And then Eric and Kathleen, who are just these delightful people, went over to Bangladesh, found this amazing director, Amitav Reza Chaudhary, and just together began bit by bit to gain traction with the film. They hired screenwriters, they hired actors, they built this whole amazing set, a village in Bangladesh, and raised the money to make the film. And so it's astounding to me. So many writers live for such write beautiful stories and are so I never get to see this happen, especially because it was all set and filmed, and all the creative collaboration happened in the country of my parents' origin, Bangladesh, which makes it even more meaningful.
That's awesome. Did you have any say in the filmmaking process, or like what they kept, what they changed, anything like
No,
that?
nothing. No, I fully handed over all the creative work to them, and um, completely trusted them. And I'm so glad I did, because I was born in India. My parents fled Bangladesh in the war of partition. And by the time I was born, we were in India. And so I went to Bangladesh and lived there for 3 years to write the story of Rickshaw Girl. But when I knew that it was going to be made by people who were Bangladeshis, who were Muslims, who grew up, who loved, which is their authentic culture. And as you can hear, I'm pretty Americanized. I grew up here. So I was just so happy to hand it over. I think if someone had tried to make it who wasn't of that culture, I would have been a lot less eager to hand over full creative power. But I knew that it would be handled well. And it's just amazing to me. They took my simple story, which if you read it, it's a quick read, Rickshaw Girl. It's a pretty simple story for children, and they made it into this whole hero's journey of a teenage girl who's really seeking to find her way in a society that pushes girls out. And so it's amazing what they've done. I'm just delighted. So as I'm getting older, Beth, and I'm collaborating more with other artists. At first, I was like, my work, my novel, I want full control over it. But then you realize as you go along, I don't know if you write books but you realize that the reader has a lot of control over the story. You can't control over what the reader does with the story. And then I've done picture books now, and the illustrator adds this incredible dimension to the story. And then now I've done this, handed over fully to the filmmakers, and it's just kind of a beautiful thing, collaborating creatively and trusting each other. I'm really growing in that, and I'm so glad I am, because it makes my stories even more, I don't know, just more wonderful and delightful to take in for myself, because it's collaboration.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Have you seen the movie?
I have. I got to go to the premiere out here in the Bay Area. My mom, who's 88, and my sisters and my nephews and my sons and my husband. And my husband he splurged and got this limo. And he said, we're gonna go in style. So my mom and I were sitting in the back of the limo. She's all proud. And I'm thinking it's a little film and a little film festival. And my husband's like, get your makeup on. There's gonna be paparazzi. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then sure enough, there were all this media there. And I stepped out of the limo, and I was like, this is my moment. It was all kind of fake and kind of real at the same time. But it was so nice to see my family all come around me and just celebrate the moment. That was last year, but the film just came out on streaming this year. So a lot of people are seeing it now that didn't get to see it in theaters when it was in theaters, it was in the pandemic. And so now that it's streaming on all these, Prime and Apple TV and library apps and things like Canopy and Vudu and all these, I feel like my friends are like, oh, this is legit. This is legit. And so they're all getting on board and getting excited for me. Yeah.
That's awesome. Um, so what is something that from your story that you're really excited for people to see?
Well, it's interesting because I love crossing borders into other cultures, because when you're just stuck in your own culture, like the American culture, you see things through such that lens. And so we're talking a lot about gender in this country now, and that lens is something that we're all collectively looking through it. And but when you go to a country like Bangladesh, where gender is really tied to economics, and I know it has been in America. I know that's true that women still are struggling to find, economic power here, but not like they are in, not to the extent in those countries. And so I grew up with grandmothers who were immensely talented, but had no way to contribute. They grew up in the villages of Bangladesh, and they had no way to contribute economically to the family. And so, and that's still true in the villages. Girls are struggling to have any kind of economic power, but they're discovering the beauty of small loans and how they could set up businesses. And so when we lived there for 3 years, I was working in development. It was fascinating to see how economic power changes everything for a girl, and it can really help her, just in so many ways. So the idea that, gender is not just about gender and about identity. It's also about economic power. And I love being able to offer that to the United States at this time in our discussion, is to widen the lens and to realize that, it's not just about this moment and this era and this culture, but the whole idea of gender being tied to power is something that I'm happy to offer to American audiences. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a timely topic. Definitely. Um, so what's next for you? Are you currently writing something? Are you a part of another film project? What's going on?
Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah, it's it'd be great if I started getting all my books optioned. That would be really fun. But it's a real once in a lifetime thing with the film. Um, Maybe twice in a lifetime. I'm open.
Yeah.
Let's see. But when it comes to writing, I just keep going because that's where the joy comes from. It's a hard career. The creative career is a hard one. You get lots of rejections and critiques, um and so yeah, you have to keep finding joy in the making of the art. So I'm always working on the next story, and trying to shift my eyes away from, I would say, the career, like, is it getting good reviews, is it getting, what kind of reception is my work getting? And that's the career, because that's important, and I try to be excellent at that. But then when you go back to vocation, which is sort of the calling, the thing that you're supposed to do on this earth, the thing that gives you joy. The Frederick Buechner, the late great author, said, "Your vocation is where the world's deep need meets your great joy." And so, writing books for young people, writing stories for young people, that's my great joy. And so, if I can get back to that, get back to the joy of creating, then. So I'm writing the next story. I have a book coming out in July called Hope in the Valley. A lot of my books deal with justice issues, and I, studied political science and public policy. I care about people on the margins, I guess. And so this book's about affordable housing in California, but it's a story of a girl who's 11 years old and who loves to write stories and poems, and is growing up in California. And just so it's a very personal story. I wrote poems when I was 12, and I got to put those poems into this novel. And so while it is about affordable housing and the power of local politics and how we should get involved in local politics, the story is really about a girl who doesn't want to lose the house across the street that's being mowed down to make new room for new development. And she used to sneak in there in the beautiful apricot orchard and write poems. And now that's being torn down. And so it's about a girl who's losing her past and doesn't really want to move into the future. And so that's coming out in July. I'm really excited about that book because it's very personal, but it's also sort of political, and maybe getting kids interested in local politics and how local politics make a huge difference in our lives. We get caught up in big politics, but getting involved in your town and your city is pretty powerful, even as kids.
For sure, for sure. Um, if we wanna stay up to date with that book and other things that you're working on, where can we follow you?
Well, Beth, I'm the only Mitali Perkins on the planet Earth. There's no other
Oh.
combination of that name. When I go to India, they pronounce the Mitali Perk really well. Here I get like latte for Mitali or latte for Natalie, then I go to India and they're like, oh, Mitali Parkins. Like they can't do that part. So it's a classic hybrid hyphenated name, Mitali Perkins, and I'm the only one online. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me online, mitaliperkins.com, Mitali. But even if you misspell it, put it into Google, I'll pop up. I'm the only one. Yeah, which makes it kind of tricky, I got to keep my reputation pretty good online. Can't hide behind the other Mitali Perkins in the world that are doing better than me. Yeah, so you can find me there. And the Rickshaw Girl movie has its own site, rickshawgirlmovie.com. You can find out about where to watch it, and yeah, and keep track of all my failures and my successes and my in-betweens on by following me on the social media and also on my website.
Great, great. Before I let you go, is there anything else you wanna add about your book or the movie?
Right. Well, it is an exciting time because of streaming. It's a time when filmmaking is getting really it's much more democratic than it used to be. It used to have a huge budget and it has to be made in Hollywood and for it to reach audiences across the world, but that's not so much anymore. It's one of the weird outcomes of the pandemic is that almost anybody can make a film. It doesn't have to be big budget and in any part of any corner of the world and reach audiences around the whole world. So it's a real chance for storytellers who love film um, to take a risk. So I'd love to encourage young filmmakers, young people who love a book, maybe to adapt it and to see where it goes, because it is a time when you can reach audiences in a way you couldn't before. And that's an exciting thing. It's hard, and big name actors are having a hard time making their 8 figures and like they used to, because they used to be able to. They kind of had command over the whole industry, and so but on the other hand, a little actor like Navera Raman, who plays Naima, who's a fantastic actor, can make her way to screen and her art be enjoyed by so many people across the world, as is happening in Rickshaw Girl. So it's a delightful time, I think, to make stories in film and to take books that you love. And books are a great place to start because they have the classic narrative arc, and you don't have to work as hard to make a film. So I would recommend that to your listeners, just to take a risk and it's a really exciting time for artists all around. Risky, but very open right now for stories.
Nice, nice. That is definitely true, definitely true.
I don't know about you, Beth. Do you write? Are you an artist?
More academic
Oh,
writing.
okay. Great. Well, that's definitely necessary. And I know it's also a time when we can access all kinds of research that we couldn't before. And in doing research for my novels, I'm so grateful for all the academic writing that I have access to just from my computer now, that I don't have to go and dig up in some musty old library anymore. I can find your writing, and it can help my work. So it's good.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for chatting with
Thank
me.
you.
I love
Thanks
the
for taking.
movie.
Oh, I'm glad you saw it. I didn't realize you saw it. So that's great. I'm glad you were able to see it and enjoy it. Yeah, it's very colorful and beautiful. So thanks for the interview and thanks for your support.
Of course, of course. Have a great
All
rest
right.
of your day.
Thanks, you too, Beth. Bye.